Chama. I am a lawyer. Most of what I do when I'm doing my lawyering is helping businesses navigate the legal landscape in Zambia. At the moment, I'm a partner at Musa Dudia and Company. We partnered with Bongo Hive sometime last year in August, and part of our partnership is for us to help in the growth and development of entrepreneurship. In addition to me doing my lawyering work, I have an interest in seeing businesses succeed, particularly in helping businesses that are doing technology in Zambia. So it's good to be with you guys today and discuss this not so simple topic of cryptocurrency. I'll talk about legal perspectives on cryptocurrency use in Zambia. Essentially, what does the law say about this? And what are some of the pitfalls that you need to look out for? And what are some of the things that you should do to avoid falling foul of the law? So in terms of what we'll talk about, I won't spend a lot of time on cryptocurrencies because I think a lot of time has been spent talking about that. We'll look at slightly some similarities and differences between normal money, fiat money, and cryptocurrency. After which we'll then look at some challenges that are posed by dealing with cryptocurrency. And then lastly, we'll look at what our law says on cryptocurrency, as well as what regulatory reaction we have received from regulators within Zambia. I hope at the time that we talk about the distinctions, it will explain why you should actually have Bitcoin. I'll not pay much attention to that, but I'll just highlight the fact that part of cryptocurrency coming around is as a result of failures of the financial system, right? In the financial system, if I have to pay money to someone that's, let's say, North Korea, it would likely take a bit of time, right? Because when I send it to my bank will raise the first red flag of, oh, this is going to North Korea, it's on the sanctions list, can you actually pay them? So essentially, I'm giving my money to a third party, that third party gets the money and gives it to my, let's say, brother who's in university in North Korea. So there are those issues. Then the second bit is, after 2008, global downturn, when banks invested badly in mortgages, among other things, trust in the banks waned, right? So people then thought, look, if these banks that we pay so much money, they charge us money to keep money in the bank, they charge us money to transfer it, if we can't actually trust them, they get paid so well but could not keep a system running because of greed, how else can we ensure that we can transact without having them there? So instead of having a multi-party system for us to conduct payments, someone thought of, can we not pay each other directly without involving the bank? To cut down on costs, we would be able to have a certain level of comfort that this thing won't break down because of the greed of a third party managing that system. So part of those reasons are part of the reasons that we then saw the development of alternative payment systems, including cryptocurrency. Now, as mentioned, at the time of creation by Satoshi, it's a certain number of Bitcoin. So there can't be more Bitcoin than what was created. And it may be easier for my colleagues who have the technical expertise to explain how it's actually done. But the basic of it is using cryptocurrency. Let's say one person said this is the maximum number that it will be, and it can't be changed. And a number of people who also have expertise in cryptography agreed and said, yes, in fact, this is the actual number. You will notice as well that at the time that the presentations were being given, it was said that it's a system that is essentially majority ruled, right? So if the majority of people agree on this particular thing, they can agree that this is what it is, and that's what it will be. So part of it relies on the fact that because you cannot change anything unless the majority agree, it is much more secure than a situation where a person sitting at the central bank or a person sitting at another bank can alter something that you do not agree to. Now, what are some of the similarities of cryptocurrency and real money? I think the first one, and perhaps it could answer your question, it's a store of value. Where do we keep value? Sometimes you get your gratuity, and the first thing you think of is a plot, right? Why are you getting the plot? You want to store your value. Why are you building that house? You want to store value. Similarly, you can keep your value in Bitcoin or in any other cryptocurrency. You can also keep your value in hard currency, but hard currency will have its inhibitions. If your house burns with it. If you kept your currency at, what's the name of that bank? That's now Zambia Commercial Bank. Intermarket. If you kept your money at Intermarket, people lost money, right? If you kept your money at Intermarket, let's say 1 million, and the bank went under, I think they were only paying up to a portion of it. So if they paid you 50%, the other 50% is gone, right? So as you look at where you can store value, if you believe this is safe for you, you know what the risks are, this is a place that you can actually store value. In terms of value determination, it's similar, it's demand and supply. You remember at some point Bitcoin went as high as $20,000. Yeah. At the moment, there was a dip, right? It's demand and supply, similar to real money. Medium of exchange, you can pay for things with it. So in the way that I could provide, let's say, this discussion and say pay me by Bitcoin, I could also say pay me using money, right? We'll talk about the difference in terms of how money is legal tender and the fact that cryptocurrency is not, but you can use it as a medium of exchange. But remember that you can use a lot of other things as a medium of exchange, right? You can live in that house, and perhaps you keep chickens, and instead of getting cash, your landlord could say, give me chickens worth that cash, right? So you can use anything as a medium of exchange. Cryptocurrencies are just one more thing that you can use. Perhaps the confusion could come in the fact that the name also has currency. So we tend to think of it as real money or fiat money. Similar to money, it was mentioned that money doesn't really have the same value over time, right? What is 100 kwacha today will not be 100 kwacha in a year. It could be inflation, among other things. Similar to cryptocurrency, it may and does fluctuate over time, perhaps even at a faster pace than real money. Some differences, I think one is the obvious one. In Zambia, Bank of Zambia prints the kwacha. So we know that there's a particular person that will issue those notes. Real money is physical, you can touch it, cryptocurrency is not. Real money is legal tender, cryptocurrency is not. Now in terms of legal tender, it is essentially something that you are compelled to accept if someone owes you money. So if today I have a debt to you, 10,000 kwacha, if I came and gave you the 10,000 kwacha, you cannot say, no, I'm not getting it, give me something else or else you still owe me the debt. Assuming you went to court trying to enforce the debt, the court will be able to agree with me and say, no, in Zambia, to extinguish debts, you have to give someone legal tender. Legal tender in Zambia is the kwacha. Cryptocurrency, on the other hand, you can't force me to get it. So it can't be that I have money in my wallet and my landlord bothers me and I just go to him and tell him, oh, here, have some Litecoin and I'll pay you with it. He's not compelled to accept it. Huh? He can accept it, but he's not, because it's not legal tender. How does something become legal tender? Normally, the central bank of that country will say that this is legal tender. In our case, the only legal tender we have is the kwacha. As we earlier said, at the time that cryptocurrency is created or formed, there's a definite supply. So there'll be a specific number, X number of Bitcoin. So it's a capped supply. In the case of money, you can always print it, right? If we run out of money, you can print more. Yes, the value that you actually have because you now have much more money is less, but the central bank does and will print more money when there's need to print more money. Now, typically, when you're talking about cryptocurrency, we've spoken about mining, how do you get Bitcoin, how it all started. Primarily, there are three players. There's going to be an administrator, there's going to be an exchange, there's going to be a user. Now, sometimes you can play all those three roles, but more often than not, you will be there as the person that's using it. You get it, you use it. Now, to just briefly explain this, administrator can be looked at as a person that creates or issues virtual currency. The exchange is more like a marketer. If you think of vegetables, I live in Ibex, there are some farms nearby. I have two options if I want vegetables, right? I could go to the farm, ask the guy who planted them, and we transact directly, right? Alternatively, I could go to the market, right? So the market is a place where those that are selling vegetables will come and sit, waiting for people to come and buy, right? Similar to cryptocurrency, there are things called an exchange. The ones that we looked at, was it Coin, what was the name? The Zambian Law? Yes, so like Coin Mama, that's an exchange. So essentially, this is a person that will sit and say, look, if you want to buy cryptocurrency, you can come to this site. You'll be able to buy and sell cryptocurrency. And if you want to buy it, you can come with your kwacha, and I'll give you the value of cryptocurrency worth that much at that time. Exchanges can be administrator affiliated, non-affiliated, or third party. So essentially, the person who started the currency could also have an exchange, or it could be an independent third party altogether. The user is essentially you and I. Those of us that to buy, those of us rather that to acquire virtual currency, and you use it to purchase real or virtual goods and services, or simply get the cryptocurrency and transfer it to a third party or another person. Now, what are some of the challenges that you have with cryptocurrency? Firstly, not so easy to understand, right? And secondly, you're using computers. Now, because you're using a computer and assets are digital, there's a risk that you can be hacked. You can be hacked at the administrator level, exchange level, or user level. Of course, there are things that you can do, like keep information on hardware. Essentially, instead of what you could call a digital wallet, you can have a hardware wallet where you keep information. And I think Mulima will speak more about that when he talks about security. You can manage that risk, but even then, it's not as if it's 100% certain, because you could lose that thing, or it could be stolen from you, right? Price volatility. Pricing changes a whole lot. Potential regulation by regulators. I think we'll look at this and look at the example of what happened to heritage coins in Zambia. So essentially, because this is uncharted water, you don't know what the regulator will say, right? You don't know what the regulator will do. Unfortunately, we've not gotten very instructive statements coming from our regulators. The fact that there's no regulation also means that you're not protected. So it's an owner's risk. You have to be careful and you have to get to know the subject. The best advice you can get to me is find out as much as possible as you can about the subject, so that as you delve into it, you know what the risks are. Potential tax liabilities. It's an open secret that the government needs money, right? Essentially, if you trade in cryptocurrency and make money out of it, you're essentially making income, right? Very easy, and very easy for ZRA to come back and say, well, but that income that you earned must be taxed, because it is income. When you look at the Income Tax Act, granted, when it was enacted a lot of years back, they didn't think about cryptocurrency, but their definition is wide. Income includes gains or profits from any business. It's easy for you to fall in that category, right? So you need to be mindful of the fact that, yes, when you're trading in that, bear in mind that there's also tax risk. A lack of KYC. As you remember, we're trying to use this technology to avoid intermediaries, banks, right? And one of the key things about this is that it's anonymous. Now, the challenge that you have is you do not know who you're sending money to. So it's not as if the platform will tell you, Gilbert, you're now sending X to this person who's found at this place, so that if anything happens, you can go and find that person. Now, the risk with that is that because it's anonymous, the risks of having tainted money in the system are very high. So someone that gets proceeds of corruption could get that money, instead of what the usual is to bury it at the farm, could get that money, go to Coin Mama, buy coins, transfer those or trade them for something else, and get money back out. It makes it much harder for people that do prosecutions to be able to do a good job, right? Because the truth is you can't trace them once they get into that platform. In addition to proceeds of crime or corruption, there's money laundering, terrorism financing, and because of the anonymity of it all, there's also a high probability of frauds occurring and scams occurring on these platforms. Another challenge that is posed is the absence of authority as legal tender. So I could have Bitcoin worth $1 million today. If I owe my bank money, until I change Bitcoin into real money, my liability remains, right? So part of the challenge is also the fact that it is not accepted as legal tender. So even if you have it, you can't pay it to extinguish a debt unless someone specifically agrees and says, yeah, it's okay, pay me in Bitcoin. There's another issue of uncertainty on applicable law in case of a dispute. So assuming You provide a service, someone should pay you in cryptocurrency, and he's based in the US, and he pays you less. How will you sue him? Where will you find him? This guy is essentially a guy that's on a computer. He doesn't provide you any address. He doesn't tell you where he lives. He doesn't tell you what he does. He doesn't provide you his email address. Doesn't provide you his contact details. So then the question also becomes, because he's based there, are you compelled to go to the US and sue him to get your money back or to get value for the services? So those are some of the challenges that you face. Others will look at them as advantages, because the fact that you can't actually go to one place, one will think of it as a global currency and something that we can use to actually trade across continents. Now, what does our law say on cryptocurrency? One would say, thankfully, it doesn't stop you from using it. It doesn't stop you from trading in it. And there's actually no specific law that specifically targets or regulates cryptocurrency. One thing that's clear, though, is that it's not legal tender. Not prohibited, but not legal tender. So you can't force people to accept it as legal tender. And if you look at the Bank of Zambia, which is our central bank under the Bank of Zambia Act, it's the only body that is allowed to issue notes and coins to be legal tender in Zambia. You can issue notes and coins for whatever purpose. It can even be for purposes of showing your commitment to any cause, but provided you're not issuing it as legal tender, that is okay. The problem comes in when you start issuing it as legal tender. If you go further under the Bank of Zambia Act, then it talks about what is legal tender in Zambia, what are the things that you must accept, you are forced to accept it to extinguish a debt in Zambia, which is the kwacha. As earlier mentioned, the right to issue coins is exclusively vested in Bank of Zambia, meaning no one else other than Bank of Zambia can issue kwacha or legal tender in Zambia. But there's an interesting provision in that act. It talks about how any person other than the bank, and the bank there is Bank of Zambia, right, who issues in Zambia notes or coins other than documents or tokens, which are payable to a bearer on demand, or purport to be the currency of the Republic or the currency of any other country, shall be guilty of an offense and shall be liable on conviction to a fine of about $300,000 and imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years. So obviously that screams caution, right? Ideally, at the time they were making this law, it was to stop you printing any funny paper and then saying, oh, this is also currency. But this could also apply because it's widely drawn to apply to cryptocurrency. So you notice that more often than not, what people will do is create cryptocurrency, but fall short of saying this is legal tender, right? Because once you get into the realm of declaring it as legal tender or purporting it to be a currency of Zambia or another country, you could fall foul of that legal provision. Now, where it refers to pay the bearer on demand, it essentially says it's payable to the holder. So you notice on our notes, it does indicate I promise to pay the bearer on demand. I think we've spoken about this in terms of the fact that legal tender and what essentially the law there is saying that what is legal tender are the things that the Bank of Zambia issues as legal tender. The thing that Bank of Zambia has issued as legal tender is the kwacha. And as discussed, legal tender is essentially coins or banknotes that must be accepted if offered in payment of a debt. Now you notice there's something interesting in Section 33 of the Bank of Zambia Act, is that Bank of Zambia has power to issue coins and designate them as legal tender in Zambia under Section 33 of the Bank of Zambia Act. So it's not as if the door is shut on cryptocurrency, right? You can still use part of those laws to make sure this is passed. But the risk then becomes, with the risks that cryptocurrency has, is it safe for a regulator to, like Bank of Zambia, to just say, oh yes, this is the cryptocurrency that we authorize and you can use it. Assuming they do that, and which they can do, you still have people that will then be saying, wait a minute, this is supposed to be peer-to-peer. It shouldn't have any intermediaries. And once you then get the central bank saying, yes, this is okay, then we are getting back to where we were before 2008, right? Notable laws that you need to bear in mind. So even if Zambian law doesn't say you can't use cryptocurrency, it doesn't stop you from using it, but some things that you need to bear in mind are Bank of Zambia regulation, essentially the fact that it issues legal tender, Secondly, and most importantly, bear in mind that taking deposits from the public is a regulated act. You can't go to people and get deposits unless you have a banking license. You look at the example of heritage coins, essentially I think they have what we're calling a partnership fee. Now, how the court looked at it and how the regulator looked at it was, no, this partnership fee is a deposit. You're taking deposits contrary to the Banking and Financial Services Act. Therefore, you're operating without a banking license, and this is what will do to you. So bear in mind, taking of deposits, be cautious of taking deposits, because then you could fall foul of those laws that are governed by the Bank of Zambia or regulated by the Bank of Zambia. Securities and Exchange Commission. So essentially for the Securities and Exchange Commission, it regulates capital markets, people that are raising money. If you want to buy and sell shares in a public company, you go to the Lusaka Stock Exchange. The people that regulate all that happens there and ensures that you're protected is the Securities and Exchange Commission. So that Securities and Exchange Commission will tell companies to say, if you want to issue shares to the public, this is what you must do. You must tell them what your business is about. You must tell them what the risks are. And you have to do certain submissions. You must publish in the newspaper what your financials are, among other things. Now, in addition to that, the Securities and Exchange Commission also regulates investment advisory services. So if you're providing investment advisory services relating to securities, advising people on what to invest in, for example, invest in that company, invest in that other company, and not this company, you need an investment license under the Securities and Exchange Commission. At the moment, SEC don't regard cryptocurrencies as securities at the moment, but they've also kept it open to say, look at that cryptocurrency. When you look at it, does it fit into what we define a security as? If it fits into what we define a security as, then if you're going to provide advice on investing in that cryptocurrency, you need that license. If you don't get the license, you fall foul of the law and you could be prosecuted. Then other laws that apply for everything else, right? Zambia police applies to almost everything, right? It applies to my phone. If my phone is stolen, the police will be involved, right? For cryptocurrency, if you hack, Zambia police could be a problem. Huh? If you come up with a fraudulent scheme where you collect money from people and pretend to make investments for them and not make the investments, that is fraud, Zambia police would be applicable. Anti-Corruption Commission, we've talked about proceeds of crime and false pretenses. Drug Enforcement Commission, money laundering. You make money out of, let's say, selling drugs, and you want to use that money by putting it in using the money, putting it in an exchange, getting cryptocurrency, subsequently converting the cryptocurrency into money. Those are crimes. In addition, there's a law called the Electronic Communications and Transaction Act. It generally prohibits you using the internet as a medium for any illegal activity, trade, fraudulent transaction, or internet-related fraud. So there are sufficient laws that will dictate how to behave in this space. Zambia Revenue Authority, taxation. They may not be enforcing the rules so strictly now, because most of what they look at is, does this person work? Do they pay as you earn? Yes. So that if you earn any money on the side that is not covered by them by any of the withholding tax programs, you'll be able to get out with it. But bear in mind the fact that our expenses as a country are growing. We have to pay debt soon, a series of debts. ZRA has to have pressure to get more and collect more in terms of taxation. One easy place to start is the money that people are making from cryptocurrencies, right? For converting these cryptocurrencies into real money. So bear in mind with the fact that yes, it could sound nice that you can have 10 Bitcoin, that means $1,000 today, and it could be $20,000 tomorrow. But if you convert that into kwacha and let's say transfer it into your account, there may be some tax liability because that can be looked at as income. What have the Security Exchange Commission said about cryptocurrency? So essentially for SEC, they've just said, well, this is not security for purposes of the Act. And other than not being security, we notice that there are some advisory services being provided by people. They should be cautious, because once you deal with cryptocurrency that fits into security, you need their licensing. You notice the key bit there, right? It's bold. It's a warning, huh? Investors should exercise extreme caution. With guys like me. Check the credibility and accurateness of information. Other than checking the accurateness and credibility of information, understand it. We all just read from somewhere. None of us went to school and were told this is cryptocurrency or this is Bitcoin. You read information that's online, but even online, be careful of the sources of information, right? It's not all doom and gloom. You can notice SEC saying somewhere there that it could be positive, disruptive, transformative, and enhance efficiency, right? Bank of Zambia. So Bank of Zambia had a press release on cryptocurrency where they emphasized what we've discussed, the fact that it's not legal tender. They warned about the risks of crypto. We've discussed those risks. And fortunately, similar to SEC, not all doom and gloom. I think Bank of Zambia were able to say, look, regulation should enable innovation, even though in most cases regulation will follow technology, because the rate at which these things change, the rate at which we improve our lives, is slower than the rate at which people in parliament sit and pass laws, right? They could pass the law today and things have already changed, meaning we have to wait another 3-4 months before parliament resumes and sits. So Bank of Zambia gave some helpful guides saying essentially regulations should enable innovation and not constrain innovation. For that purpose, they'll be monitoring closely what was happening relating to crypto. Part of that monitoring led to Heritage Coins. So Heritage Coin started in June 2018. A Zambian registered company. Essentially, they said they were a digital currency financing and real estate development company, and they also provided financial advisory services. So what they would do, I think, is receive deposits from people and essentially claim that they would invest the money online for people. And difficult as it may sound, there are people that believed in this, got a loan, gave the money to these guys, expecting that they'll invest it in crypto. And at that point, certain cryptos were doing very well. They expected that there would be a return, 100% return, let's say in 1 week or so. In the end, it turned out that some of it didn't happen, some of it happened. In the end, Bank of Zambia and the Drug Enforcement Commission arrested the 3 directors on suspicion of running a scam that was worth over $2 million. Part of the risk. What happened sometime in January 2019, the directors were convicted. But you look at the conviction, what is it for? Conducting banking business without a license, right? The mistake they made, received deposits from the public.